Hello, and welcome to Jason Cavness Experience. I'm your host, Jason Cavness. The Jason Cavness Experience is sponsored by Seller Labs. At Seller Labs, they help non-tech founders obtain product market fit faster by delivering MVPs at 70% of the cost and 32% faster. For more information, contact at Seller Labs or just reach out to me. We're also brought to you by 8-Bit Content, a content marketing agency specialized in boosting awareness and leads for business. As a listener of the Jason Cavness Experience, you receive a free site audit to help identify opportunities for growth. Simply visit www.8bitcontent or email will@8bitcontent.com, or you can go on the screen here and just click on the QR code for the audit. So our guest today is Andrew McMasters. Andrew, thanks for being here today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Hold on. We're fast. Why is it not showing? Hold on.
Yeah.
So Andrew, I always try to talk with like an easy question. What do you do for fun or your hobbies and like stuff like that?
Oh man, I'm an actor, so to be honest, a lot of the stuff for fun is either seeing something that is live performance, or being able to. My friends still do a lot of improv stuff, so every once in a while I get to jump on stage with them, which is nice. It both reminds me how rusty I get if I don't keep my skills up. But it also is just those things I think of, you get to do something and make people laugh, and that just boosts how you feel about the world,
So you've been like an actor for like over 20 years, right?
Yeah.
And you're actually like school trained, that correct?
Yeah.
So what possesses someone to go to school to be an actor?
It's a question I get asked all the time. Actually, I kind of tell the story of my mother was the one who really kind of helped me with the decision. I grew up in Philadelphia, and she had gone back to school, gotten her degree, and then she was working at a law firm. And one of the lawyers there showed up one day and said they were quitting, like a partner in a law firm in Philadelphia, because they had gotten the job playing the tuba in the Philadelphia Philharmonic. And so here's this high-priced lawyer who quits his firm to go play the tuba. And my mom came home and said, if you don't do what you want to do now, it's going to come back and get you at some point. So I was looking at a lot of science. I was looking at biomedical engineering, trying to figure out what I wanted to do for college. And at that point, I sort of dropped it and went, no, I kind of want to go to school for theater. So I went to school for theater. And I've never looked back on it. It was probably the best choice that I could have made. It's incredible what you learn.
So what would you learn as being an actor? Like, is it like you have to study Shakespeare or some other people, or you learn method acting? Because when people think of acting, it's like there's more than one kind of acting, right? Oh,
yeah. I mean, you learn classical work, Shakespeare, you learn all of that, as well as kind of breaking down how you show up and how you speak and how you are presenting what your ideas are out to other people. That's the piece that I think is a little limiting when it comes to that. I mean, I have my master's degree in drama. I have an undergraduate degree, a BA in theater. They teach you how to show up on stage, and they teach you how to do that work. And then they don't really kind of say, well, this also works outside in the world. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of the key is when you go to school for liberal arts, you have to be thinking of like, okay, I may not go on to be an actor because, the percentages are you won't. However, how can these skills be used and what can they do? Even in my graduate class, there were 12 of us in our graduate class. 3 of them are now lawyers.
I can see how
right.
I definitely can see, put on a show and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. These are actors that are like, okay, how do I take command of a room? How do I influence people? How do I tell the story to get people go, yeah, you're right. There we go. I mean, that's all acting skills.
I can easily see, like pose someone has a big case coming up, right?
Yeah.
Suppose they're going to trial for murder. One lawyer is like a really good lawyer. but has no command presence.
Yeah.
Other guys, average lawyer has like really command of the room, right?
Yep.
Most people think the person can command the room, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of my friends in LA is a prosecutor, and he even told, like, he was coaching another lawyer, and he's like, yeah, okay, this is really great the way you stood up there. He goes, but you need to come out from behind that desk. You need to make an entrance into the room when you're talking. Like, so it's that you are working on how you command the room. That's kind of the key.
I'm guessing, like, do they teach anything about business at acting school, like how to run a business? Not
a whole lot.
While you answer that, I'm going to fix this camera real fast.
Yeah. Not a whole lot, to be perfectly honest. It's a lot about how you get on stage, how you do that work. It's really not a whole lot about how you manage those pieces. And that's, I think that's just kind of one of the things that happens. For me, the time I started graduate school, I also started my own company. So I was also thinking in terms of like, yes, it's art. Yes, it's theater. And I've got to pay the rent. And I got to pay people. And I have to make things work. So I had to think in terms of both the art that was being put on and also the business.
And do they do anything to prevent you from becoming a starving artist?
Not a whole lot. No, I think it is up to the individual to figure out, how am I going to use this stuff? Where does this go? What do I do with this at this point? And that's kind of the key, And
so what's the difference, if there's any, between acting and improv? Are those kind of the same things?
I think they are intertwined in so many different ways. With improv, we don't have a script, so we don't know what's going to happen. But if you think about it, that's the same as this conversation we're having. You say something, I respond to it. I say something, you respond to it. It's just, we are just improvising. With a lot of stage work, there's a script. And so I know what your response is going to be. However, I practice it so much that I don't think about it. And then when you say it, I hear it for the first time. Even though I've heard you say it 9 million times in rehearsal and we've practiced it and I've read it, I'm still in this moment of improvising to the moment of you said it. And it's like, oh, and even tonight you said it slightly different. And then that affects me in a different way. And so now that takes a different direction.
What's that one exercise where, like, if you say a sentence, but you emphasize each word, it means a different thing, even though it's the same sentence?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, let's eat grandma. Or let's eat grandma.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. So when was the last time you actually been on a stage, whether in a theater or anything else, actually did, like, quote unquote real acting?
Wow. It's been a little while. I did some stuff there's a great organization called 1448. And they do wonderful, wonderful stuff. They put together actors, playwrights, directors, writers, and they go, okay, here's a theme. Writers, we want you to go home and write a play. And then the next morning, the actors and directors get together and then they produce the play that night. So okay. I would say that's kind of fun. And every once in a while I do stuff for them. So it's been nice.
And you might not know this, but like, you have to know, like, there's all these colleges teaching like acting and fine arts and stuff. Or junior colleges. I'm sure there's I'm sure there's like trade schools for art, but not trade schools. I don't really call them. But of all these actors out there, actresses being trained, what percentage do you think actually go into acting as a career?
Probably a small amount. I don't know if I could do percentages, but I think it's a small amount. I think one of the things too that is the mindset they don't really get people on is the whole idea of, if you want to work, then create your own work. Like, there are coffee shops with a little room in the back where you can be like, hey, I want to do a staged reading of this play. Hey, I want to do this. Even if you're inviting people over to your home to like practice something. If you want to work, you can do work. The question is when we all sit and wait for someone to hire us, then you kind of give up your own financial future, your own artistic future. You hand that into someone else. And as an artist, I don't think you can do that. You have to take control of your own future, your own work, your own artistry. So that's the kind of key that you got to do. And I think a lot of people get depressed because it's like, well, no one's hiring me, so I'm done,
So acting has been around probably since the beginning of time, right?
Yeah.
Do you think acting, the way anything about acting has changed through the years, or is acting like acting?
Oh, I think it's changed a lot, especially with the wealth of technology that we have. That idea of, I could either be on a stage and there's 1,000 people, and so I have to be seen all the way to the back, or this moment where the camera is directly in front of me. So that sort of instantaneous piece is a little bit different and a little bit more subtle. I still think the basis of the thought and the process is there, where, when someone thinks about something, do they, think about it with this huge motion in their or face, or do they just think about it and go, oh. So it's the simplicity of action. And I think when people learn that simplicity of action and simplicity of response, that makes them a better actor.
So at acting school, do they also teach you how to be a director, how to do editing? They teach the whole 9 yards of movie making, so to speak. It's just like acting itself.
Yeah, it's just acting itself. You specialize. I mean, for a lot of schools, it's you go for, I am doing performance. Okay. I'm going to be an actor, or I'm going to be a director, or I'm going to be a lighting designer, or I'm going to be a set designer. Like you specialize at some point.
And then what are some pros and cons of being an actor? Most people think the pros be famous, make a lot of money. I'm guessing the cons everyone doesn't become rich and famous as an actor, right?
Right.
It's either you make it. It's almost like either top percent or bottom 1%. Almost seems like.
I mean, the biggest pro is, to be honest, you are showing up and you are expressing yourself in the thing that is the thing you want to do. You are allowing yourself to be seen in front of other people. You are creating art. A lot of times too, you're creating that art with friends of yours who you're working with. So it's stuff, that kind of stuff I think is huge. And that's a huge benefit. Especially these days with so many things happening and people getting kind of distance from each other and people not communicating fully. The moment to be able to have a play where someone goes, oh, wow, I was thinking about that. And that started a conversation and then this. And so a lot of that art basically is just meant to be a catalyst for starting a conversation and getting people closer.
Do you have your favorite actors or actresses?
I am a fan of Kevin Kline.
Are you? Okay.
I've always been a fan of Kevin Kline.
Okay.
And I think it actually comes into a little bit of what we're talking about too. He used to do movies in order to basically be able to afford doing theater and Shakespeare in the Park in New York and everything else. So it was kind of like, I'll go do a movie. Oh, great. That made a lot of money. And now I can do this other stuff. And to me, that was just sort of the idea. Why not do something that's highly lucrative, make that money, and then create the fun stuff that you want to do, even if it's hey, we're doing this weird play in the back of a coffee house. Who cares? I always appreciated that.
And how long have you lived in the Seattle area?
Oh, yeah.
That long?
Yeah.
Okay.
I moved here at the end of '89.
Okay.
So a long time now.
So how is the theater scene here in Seattle, right? Of course, I'm guessing it's not anywhere close to New York City, I'm guessing, or LA, but how is the scene here, as far as you know? It's
not, but it's excellent. And I moved here, to be honest, because there were more working actors per capita in Seattle than anywhere else in the country at that time. There was stuff happening. I mean, when I moved here in 1990, it felt like there were theaters in the back of every little tiny bar and back of a bookstore, and there were weird things happening. I mean, one of the first things I had done was a staged reading of a play in a coffee house where there were antique toasters on each table, and you went and bought your bread, and then you toasted it at your table. This kind of just fun, weird stuff. And I was able to afford, renting a theater and starting a company because it was affordable. Nowadays, some of that sort of smaller grassroots stuff is difficult because it's a lot more expensive. But there are still places the city, I think, has really invested in making sure there's some access to spaces, creating new spaces, preserving some of the older spaces as well. So yeah, there's still a lot going on. There's a lot of work and a lot of actors who are working. This is what they do.
Yeah. A working actor, man. That's crazy. I mean, I'm guessing it's not most parents, if you tell your parents, I want to be an actor, are you sure? Do you want to be a fireman or a doctor?
Oh, yeah.
How you going to make a living, right? Because you always hear the stories, especially females, I don't know what's came to mind. Remember the show Big Bang Theory?
Yeah.
Where Penny came from Nebraska.
Right.
To be an actress in LA, she never made it. It's she's there's thousands of me here.
Yeah.
There's a thousand blondes. I thought I'd be only one,
Yep. Yeah. No, and that's, there was something actually, Bryan Cranston from Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
he had mentioned something a little while ago, and I thought it was really fascinating. He talked about going to auditions and like being depressed because it's like you keep going to these auditions, you don't get anything, doesn't make a difference. And he changed his mindset to say, my job is just to do the audition.
Yeah.
My job is to show up and in 2 minutes do a full play, create a fully realized character, create the play. I do that 2-minute play and then I walk away. That's my job. And he's like, now, if it leads to something else, wonderful. But if it doesn't, who cares? I did my job. I did my play. And I think that mindset shift changes the idea of like, well, there's a million of me here. And, there's a million people with blonde hair and blue eyes. I'm never going to get the job, as to, well, I did the job. It was only 2 minutes long. And I did it. It was great. And now I left. And it when people show up and they don't feel as desperate, that's another thing that then people go, wow, there's something interesting about you. You're not like, please give me a job. Please, 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 please. They don't see that flop sweat.
Yeah, that has a line with a thing where like they think when you're trying to negotiate a deal with somebody, always be prepared to walk away. Like never be like, always like, even like if you need a job, you need something like, if you are desperate, always like have them tell like you can walk away.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that mentality of just, I can walk away, then allows you to show up fully, with that idea of like, oh, great. Well, then how do I fully do what I need to do in this moment?
What's the name of the show that Bob Krasner was on before Breaking Bad? It's him and the 3 kids, something breaking in the middle,
Malcolm in the Middle. Malcolm in the Middle.
Yeah.
That was it. Yeah.
I remember when the Breaking Bad first came out, people were like, what? He's playing this role? There's no way he can play this role, right? And they're like, oh shit, he can play this role damn good, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, he's an amazing actor. Yeah. Just amazing.
But it's like 2 very different characters, very like not the same at all. Like, oh shit. I remember people like, there's no way. He's playing a dope dealer. Like, get out of here. There's no Malcolm's dad. Nah. Sure enough, like shit. I think it's like one of the, at least not number 1, like top 5 series of all time, something like that,
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's fascinating too, the way he took the idea of like, I'm a chemistry teacher. I've cancer. There's no money. Like I'm just a kind of losing things. Hey, all of a sudden, here's something.
Talk about being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Having the entrepreneur spirit. Oh, what's your definition of experiential learning, if I said that correctly?
Yeah. For me, a lot of the stuff too, like I've seen a lot of programs where people are just like, well, let me talk about it. Let me show you a PowerPoint. Here's something to read. Wonderful. And then people stay seated down and they kind of talk about it, and that's great. And everyone leaves and goes, oh, wonderful. I learned this stuff. And I'm like, no, I want you to get on your feet and try it. I actually want you to have that experiential piece where you actually go, oh, wow, it was one thing to talk about it, but it's another thing to actually go through the exercise and try it. And then the goal is hopefully once you have that experience, physical experience of what it's like, now you can go, okay, how would I use that as I move forward? So it's sort of that getting your body engaged with it rather than just sitting down and going, yeah, I'm thinking about that. That's really wonderful.
So why do you think some people believe that they learn best by learning? I mean, by reading, some by doing, some by, watching examples. And do what we think the way we learn best is actually accurate and true? Or are we like kind of lying to ourselves?
I think in some, I don't say this publicly. I think in some ways we are lying to ourselves. I think we like to think that we're these wonderful cerebral human beings and that everything's happening up here, when the truth is we have an entire wealth of what we do with our body. And in fact, even like your gut has another sort of brain area, like kind of your gut area. But we never think of that as something that's actually helping to inform what we're doing. And your heart too. I mean, like there's things I talk about all the time with sales teams of like, it's great. You cerebrally have talked about this. You've talked about the benefits, all these things. But if you haven't engaged with them emotionally, they don't care. People buy things because they care. People buy things because they feel something. I have to feel something. So how we work with that. And I think the same thing when we're learning, people go like, oh, that was really great. I read this book. That's really wonderful. The truth is, does it translate to action the next day? Is it actually become a habit? Does it become something I actually do? Or was it like, yeah, that was a great book. I'm out of here. Thanks.
How many times do you think someone has to like either read or do something before they actually like, I won't say master crap, but where they kind of get it right? Like, yeah. I mean, how many times you have to say 2 + 2 is 4 until you actually understand 2 + 2 is 4, right?
Right. I think it's a lot. Building a habit, takes a long time. God, what do they say? And I'm trying to think because I just read James Clear's Atomic Habits, but he talks about at least 45 days of doing something builds a habit. I'm on run right now. That actually is what is that? 72? I forget how long it is. And I think it's about 2 months of a challenge that it takes that long of doing something every single day for it now to become a habit, second nature, that now it just happens. I don't have to think about it anymore. I just do it. And that's kind of the point, is you want to get to that point where you don't think about it anymore.
Have you heard this? I might be making this up, but I remember reading somewhere like, if you just spend 1 hour doing something, like to say you spend 1 hour learning to play the guitar and you do that for 365 straight days, after the 1 year, you'll be like top 10% of the world doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, and you think like, man, that's insane. 10%. And then you think, okay, well, actually it's like billions of people, right? You just spend 1 hour a day doing any kind of craft.
Right.
You're the top 10%.
And are you willing to actually do that every single day?
Yeah.
And keep thinking about, how am I getting better? How am I getting better? My brother was talking about that. He's played guitar for years and just sort of, playing around and looking at sheet music. And he said all of a sudden he could realize one day where he's like, I'm no longer looking at the notes. I'm now just actually looking at it, and it's just happening. And it's that moment
what's it called? Bandwidth or muscle memory?
Yeah. You get to that point where all of a sudden you're sort of you're an unconscious expert. It just happens. And I don't know how it happens. It just sort of, I practiced it enough that now it's just there and it goes.
It doesn't matter what age you are either, too, because like I was watching, what's it called? Got Talent or something like that. The Britain version.
Yeah.
And this 10-year-old kid went on there, right? Played the guitar. He covered like Jimmy Page, Slash, like the dude from AC/DC, and like Eddie Van Halen, and he played it perfectly, right? Like they're like, this kid's 10 years old, and that's perfectly played, right?
Yeah.
And like Horace, like he didn't wake up at 9 years old and do that in 1 year, right? He's been doing it for a while, but like this, so I don't think you have to. Age doesn't matter, right, as far as you want to master something, right? Just like you want to put the work in, I think.
I don't think so. I really think it's just a matter of, are you willing to spend the time? And then are you willing to actually just continue to reinforce and reinforce and reinforce? And I think it's with any new skill that you have. You just have to be willing to put in the effort and the time. I mean, I'd be fascinated to know with that kid, like, okay, how many hours a day did you practice that guitar? Because if you're that good, holy crap, you know?
Like, why even go to school? Go on tour.
Dude, you got it, man. Make it happen.
You got $1 million,
Exactly.
Another thing, too, I remember someone saying, I can't remember who was like, someone saying like, this basketball in my hand is not worth anything, right?
Yeah.
But a Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, so like multi-$1 million, right? So each two can be worth a lot of money depending on your skill set, right?
Yeah. And are you willing to spend the time to make that case?
Yeah, and invest yourself too, yeah.
Yep.
So why do you think, this is a little bit negative, but why do you think some people like to learn, others like don't like to learn?
I don't, I'm not sure why people don't want to learn. I think sometimes there are things where people go, well, I'm an expert in this, so I'm done. As opposed to, there's always something to learn. My teacher, who I did graduate school with, incredible teachers, just have been, teaching for years and years and years, studied in Japan, have just done all this amazing, amazing work, just brilliant directors, brilliant teachers. And they both retired couple of years ago, and they both had said, I'm really glad to be retired because now I don't have to be the expert anymore. And so here's these people with this wealth of knowledge who are going, I'm looking forward to learning again, or looking forward to being in that learning position. I think it really is that thing of you have to be willing to learn something from every encounter.
Talk about the points of, regardless of your age, either how young, how old you are, the points of always being curious.
I mean, I think it's sort of one of the key things in our world. We tend to get stuck too much in what we already know or what we already believe, which is kind of that bias. And so we forget to like, well, wait a minute. What does this person think? Or wait a minute. What else do I don't know? There's something that I found when I was researching for the book that was the Greeks had a word, aporia. And what it meant was, I am passionately arguing for this point in the hopes that at the end of it, I have a realization that I've been wrong the entire time. So I'm willing to enter into this conversation and into this argument where I am arguing a point. I'm arguing a point. This is what I believe. But my mindset going into it was, God, I hope I'm wrong, because then I get to learn something. And I don't think we do that these days. Like these days we go, I have a point and I'm here to defend it. I'm here to fight for it. I'm here to like tell you you're wrong, as opposed to, wow, I wonder if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
let's find out.
I've done my Facebook research, so I'm correct.
Exactly right.
I've done my Facebook research.
Right.
All my 10 friends on Facebook agree with me, so I have to be right.
So I'm right. I'm correct. There we go. I've got my confirmation bias. I'm done, Yeah.
So there's a guy I follow on Twitter. His name is Hayden Shaw.
Yeah.
And I like his philosophy. His philosophy is like, every day I should be less wrong today than I was yesterday.
Yeah.
So I thought I liked that a lot,
That is nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Talk about self-discovery, right? Like suppose someone's out there, they're 42 years old, and they're like, what do you mean self-discovery? I know who I am. What are you talking about, right?
It's an ongoing piece. I mean, so another kind of story to kind of put through. I think my father was a principal of a junior high school. He was a teacher, then he became administrator, and then finally had retired. And the time he retired, I know he had been doing that same job for 40 plus years, 45 years, 46 years. And I know when he retired, he was saying like, what do I do now? Like, this is what I do. And the whole idea kind of came to him. My brother had sort of said this was, you just stop this job. You can now do anything. And I think in some ways we all sort of think like, oh no, I've gotten to this point. I've got it. Yeah. And what's next? What happens tomorrow? I mean, let's face it. We've been through the market crashes. Now what? Well, how do you reinvent yourself to do that next thing? The world changes. Now what? What happens there? We have COVID. Now what? What happens? Like we are constantly needing to adapt and evolve to outside situations. And so if we say like, no, I know who I am, I'm all fine. You're leaving a lot of stuff on the table. You're missing out on what you could know or what you could be or who you could be.
Yeah. So I retired from the Army. I did 25 years. And that's just a lot of veterans have.
Yeah. A
lot of veterans, they get out and they're like, okay, I'm no longer Sergeant John Smith. I'm no longer the infantryman. I'm no longer this. They have a lot of veterans have a big struggle, like figuring out who they are after the military. A lot of them struggle with that big time.
Yeah. And it's that I have set this is my mentality. So I started Jet City Improv with a friend of mine in 1992. I ran it through to 2017. I have a tattoo on my arm of Jet City Improv. Like, this was my company.
Yeah.
This is my baby, And then when I left in 2017, I had this moment of like, well, wait a minute, who the hell am I then? If this is my identity, is this company and running it and being an actor and doing these pieces, now what? So I think that same thing, like you're saying, I'm a sergeant. I've been a sergeant, I've been in the Army. I've done this. Now what? I don't know. Let's find out. That's the fascinating part. It's not like it goes away. That experience is still there for you. Allow it to feed the next thing you do.
Yeah. So what is your definition of innovation?
For me, innovation is sort of that. I think we all have kind of tight parameters that we see things in. And sometimes we miss how maybe those things intertwine. I think a lot of people think innovation is coming up with like the big new idea. And for me, maybe it's more of like, well, what are the two things I already know that combine? Or what are the three things I already know that combine in some way? I think innovation is really kind of more tying together the stuff you already know to create something new, rather than going, how do I think of something new? I think people think about innovation as like, I have to sit and brainstorm something that doesn't exist. Stuff already exists. How do we tie it together to create something that is better? That to me is innovation.
So Andrew, you've had like a lot of Fortune 500 companies that your customers, correct?
Yeah.
Can you go back to the day, or can you go to the process and talk us through the process, how you got your very first 500 Fortune company?
Yeah. Interesting thing. I was still at Jet City, and I remember Hasbro contacted me and said, we want you to come out and do this thing. So flew me out to Rhode Island. I did this like 1 day whole thing on theater training for people. And afterwards, at the end of it, the HR person was taking me back to the airport and said to me, I just want to talk to you about some things because, here's this and tell me about the people in the room. Like, how do people do? How do people do? And I realized later that one of those people in the room was going to be the next like CEO of Hasbro. Mm-hmm. And here I am as an actor, and you're asking me my opinion about who shows up in a different way. And that sort of hit me as, wow, I guess I have a body of knowledge or a body of expertise that you're interested in. Whereas I'm seeing you as this huge company. Like this is like, why are you talking to me? I'm just an actor, At that same time, it was also that thing of like, oh, right, that you need someone who's going to show up in front of people, who's going to be flexible enough, who's going to listen, who's going to respond, who's not going to crack under pressure. And so you're asking me these questions to find that stuff out. That was fascinating to me. And I think that kind of led into like, well, all right, then these skills are needed everywhere. So how do I start working with other people?
So for your company, like how many clients can you handle at one time? What's your limit?
It depends. A lot of the companies right now actually are hiring me for a lot of like one-off. Like I show up, I'm doing a workshop with you, and we sort of are done. We might do some measurement beforehand, measurement afterwards. That's about it. I have been working with a few other companies for a longer term. So it's a sense of let's do some measurements, let's do some interviews with people, see what the real need is, provide some training for that, provide some ongoing coaching, and then sort of do an evaluation after that. So in that longer term, yeah, I can a couple different companies. On the shorter term, the one day you want 3 hours, yeah, sure, I can work with as many people as you need.
So for your workshops,
many days of the week, yeah.
For your workshop, do you have like 3 or 4 workshops that you give for everyone, or does each company come to you and say, hey, Andrew, we want X, Y, Z, and someone else would say, no, we want 1, 2, 3. Like how flexible are you for these workshops?
Completely. I think it's always going to be different. I think every group has different needs. And I also think the hard part is once you get in the room, what changes? Like I found a lot of times an HR director might say, this is what the team needs. This is what the group needs. This is what we're looking for. Great. Then you get in the room and you realize, oh, there's something else going on here. Like this team actually needs this in order to be able to do this, to walk away with this skill. So you have to be able to pivot. And I think every workshop is going to be individual. There are like, modules, exercises that I will, plug and play in different ways. But I think everything is kind of unique. It sort of has to be because people are unique.
So what is team building? What's the purpose of team building?
Getting the team to actually communicate with each other in a way that's going to be effective. I've done workshops for companies before where it's like this. They're operating on tables like this, and they've got laptops here. And I'd rather Slack message you, even though you're across the table from me, than look up over the laptop and talk to you. And that's just a level of both, I don't feel comfortable, I'm angry at you for something. So getting past those pieces and giving people that kind of communication skill to go, you can just talk to people. Just talk to people. Just have a conversation. Yeah.
So how do you deal with someone like me? Like I'm an introvert, and all this time like team building, my first reaction is basically, man, fuck this team building.
Yeah.
I ain't doing this shit. I don't see the purpose of it. And to be honest, like half the time I do it, I see the goodness after doing it, right? Okay, wasn't that bad, but in this, like, I don't see the purpose. I don't want to do this mess. Like, you're wasting my time. How do you deal with people like me?
You got to create buy-in. You got to create buy-in in the way of easing things in before people can actually do stuff. The other thing of team building, people always have this image in your head of, trust falls. Or here, you're going to hold a balloon between each other, and you're like, oh God, no. I mean, that kind of stuff is just that makes my skin cringe.
To me, that's just so cringeworthy.
Oh God, no. That's the kind of thing like, I'm sorry, how do I get out of here as soon as possible? Yeah, so it needs to be something that's going to be easily accessible, and also it's got to be comfortable. Like you've got to set the stage for this is going to be okay. It's going to be ridiculous. If people start laughing, maybe this is like the improv comedy part of me. Like if people start laughing, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, cool. You're having fun. Lovely. And if you're having fun, then maybe you're willing to actually take this and go, well, that was interesting. Cool. What do I take away from it?
So during the team building, how do you make sure the extroverts don't dominate it and make sure the introverts are like included, sort of, kind of?
Oh, you've got to make sure the entire room is included in so many different ways. It depends on, there's a couple different structures that I've used depending upon the size of the group. But with smaller groups, you have to scale based on how people are comfortable. In other words, like you said, I'm an introvert, so I may not want to talk to the group. Great. So even if there's like 10 or 12 people, that person is going to want to stand up and talk. However, they might be willing to talk to the person next to them. So if we're willing to do a 2-person thing where they can talk to the other person and now they're starting to feel more comfortable in that, Great. And then maybe that 2-person group turns into a 4-person group where they talk about something. And then one person from that group, doesn't have to be the introvert, can stand up and go, yeah, this is what we talked about. Great. It's allowing people to get involved with the level that they feel comfortable with. Because the minute I push them too far out of their comfort zone, they're going to freak out.
Yeah.
And you don't want that.
No.
That's antithetical to what you're trying to do.
Has this ever happened, or how have you dealt with this, right? So like, suppose you're doing a workshop. After 5 minutes, you're like, okay, this is not working. Like, you keep pushing through the workshop, even though you know it's not working, or you like kind of like have a backup plan with, okay, let's switch this up.
Oh, backup plan, 100%. I've had ones actually before. I remember in San Francisco working with a group, and at the end, like we got about maybe 2/3 of the way through, and I'm like, this is just, there's something not clicking, and I had to just stop and go, okay, what's going to be most helpful for you? And the group was really honest about, we don't get a chance to actually talk to each other that much. So what would be really helpful is we could just share kind of best practices of how we deal with these clients. I'm like, wonderful. And so then at that point, it's like, great. So I'm going to put you together in groups of 4. Have you 4 work together with this? Great. Wonderful. Let's see. Like you just pivot, because I think a lot of times in training too, people think with this workshop or something has something to do with me. It doesn't have anything to do with me. If I'm here to do team building, then it's about the team. It's not about me. So I got to let go of whatever my desire is, or whatever the objectives are, or even whatever the plan was, the curriculum, and go, okay, let's pivot. You need this. Let's do it.
And like, how do you know a workshop's a success? Is this a feeling you get? Someone gives you a grade, or how does that work out?
Yeah, it is a little bit of the feeling you get. And at the end, I like to ask people, like, what are you taking away from this? So that you can actually get people going, like, oh, okay. If I'm thinking back over the 2-3 hours that I've been here, this is what I'm synthesizing. This is what I'm taking away. And those moments, I think, are really, well, to be honest, they're helpful for me, because then I get to learn, how did this experience filter through that individual? What are they taking away from it that they're actually getting? So I get to learn of like what worked or what didn't work. And that also helps me then to know, did this hit the mark? Did it not hit the mark? Did we actually accomplish what we're trying to do?
So from your point of view, why do you think most people are like kind of fearful or scared that, portray their true selves or be authentic, so to speak?
Yeah, I think there's just a lot of that sense of the fear of, how am I going to be perceived? How do I show up to others? I don't want to be stared at. I mean, they say the number 1 fear is public speaking, which of course the joke is, and then the number 2 fear is dying. So more people are afraid to give a eulogy than they are to be the body, but it's that sense of, I don't want to stand in front of people. I don't want to have to do this presentation, and yet that's my job. So how do I do it without freaking out? That's a big piece.
So now, can you talk about the power of yes and?
Yeah. It's the main lesson that we kind of teach in improv. It's funny. It kind of goes back to some of the stuff we're talking about too, of like your next job, or how do you reinvent yourself? The whole idea of yes and is that whatever happened, happened. That is the actual, like, this is the reality. Then you build on it by saying and. So it's the yes part. I accept that reality. I build on it by saying and. The way I described it in improv all the time is like, someone comes out on stage, they say they do something, the next person accepts that, they say yes to it, and then they say and then there's a new offer, so this person accepts it, they say yes to it, they say and we continue to build scenes by saying yes and, accepting whatever happened and building on it. If at any point you say no, it's sort of like, well, now what are we doing? Right? So we lose it. I think that same idea of accepting and building kind of comes into our world. Like, in other words, you said, I finished the army, here's this. Now what? Well, that's the yes. This exists. And now what am I going to do? It sort of is that next step into the world. And I even tell people too, the whole idea of like COVID. COVID's a great example. Yes, it happened. Well, I can either deny it, I can be angry about it, I can do this. That doesn't help me. And what's the next step? So we kind of have to accept things. We don't have to like it, but it's the reality. We accept it and then we build on it. I think that happens a lot in times in business where people are just, well, no, that's not what we're going to do. And if you keep saying no and keep saying no, then people stop bringing you ideas. Now you've lost the innovation of the rest of the team, because they're not going to bring ideas to you because they know you're going to say no.
Yeah, I'm a big believer. Like even like you have a group of people working for you, even if all the ideas, like we'll say, lack of a better term, batshit crazy. Every once in a while, you gotta like throw them a bone, so to speak. I hate to use that term, throw a bone. Every once in a while, okay, this is my 10th idea. All the ideas is batshit crazy, but I have to let them run with something, right? You got to give them something to like be empowered on, right?
Yeah, and even in that batshit crazy idea, there might be like, there's a kernel of this that is really good. So how do I pull out that kernel of it? Mm-hmm. And that might be the thing that then leads us to the next direction.
But you keep on telling people no all the time.
Right.
Before you know it, they're like robots and Yeah.
I always appreciate the batshit crazy. It's always like, all right, man, you are shooting for the fence, man. Let's go for it.
Yeah. Can you explain the difference between listening to answer and listening to understand?
Yeah. I think in a lot of ways, people will, I already have a preconceived idea of how this is, or even while someone is saying something, they're thinking of, I know what my response is going to be, or I'm thinking of my response. So I'm sort of waiting for the other person's lips to stop moving. As opposed to, let's hear fully what they said. And then let's maybe reflect back. This is what I'm hearing. Is that right? Great. Okay. So then based on that, let's go do this. So it's almost like, yes, I'm hearing this, and let's do this. So kind of that yes and idea again. I think that whole idea of we don't listen fully waiting for the other person to finish their thought. German language has the verb at the end. So you have to wait for the end of the sentence. Otherwise, you don't know what they're talking about. That sort of idea. But in English, we're like, no. And we also move at such speed because of the way that our brains are wired. We tend to move way past something, even though we haven't been there for the moment.
So for your workshops, is there a minimum amount of people and a maximum amount of people that you do for your workshops?
It's been varying a lot. Lately, it feels like I'm doing a lot of larger events, which is crazy and fun. Maybe it's the improviser in me that, our theater was a 150 seat theater. So it's like, you put me in front of 150 people, let's do this thing. Yeah. I don't know. In a way, I kind of thrive on that because there's energy and there's joy. And even in 150, it just means redoing the exercises. So people are doing it individually.
So let's suppose you have a group of 20 people, right?
Yeah.
But you can tell that one person like totally locked out, zoned out. He's not buying in. Like you just like, okay, 19 out of 20, I'll walk these 19 people. The 20 person, like he's just, I can't worry about him, but you try to bring him in.
Yeah. And that is, to me, that is the person that, a lot of times that 19 person who's that way is usually, I find them not to be the introvert because the introverts won't kind of bring it up. I find that person actually to be a little bit outspoken and being like, so let me tell you why this is bullshit, and they'll be really straightforward. It's like, yeah, tell me, because I want to see where you're coming from. And I also want to see why you think this is bullshit. And then I want to be able to talk about it and go, great. So if you're thinking that means other people in this room are as well. How many other people are also thinking this is bullshit? Great. Let's talk about that. And let's try and figure out then where the practical application is going to be. For me, that one person, I love that person because that is good, man, if I can win this person over by the end of it, they're like, yeah, okay, that part's really helpful. I'm like, rock and roll, then I'm done. Like if I've gotten you bought into it in that little bit when you were telling me this was bullshit 5 minutes ago, that's a win. That's a win.
So back during COVID, of course, there's always been remote work, some kind of way in the workforce. COVID really brought it back on. And now, so it's back to a work thing, back to office thing, right? Return to office, right? Yeah. And a lot of these CEOs, especially big corporations like JP Morgan, are saying, come back to work because this team dynamics, workforce, whatever, brainstorming is better in the office versus remote.
Yeah.
Can you explain how actually remote work can actually have better team dynamics?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You have to, and I think it actually is, I think it can actually be more beneficial because I feel like with remote work, you have to actually structure that and you have to plan for it. In other words, hey, here's this time that we're all going to meet and we're just going to talk about what's going on in our world. Or here's this time we're going to do this. We have to actually think ahead to think about how we're building relationships and how we are having that innovation time. that used to be the, hey, I saw you, we were going to grab some water, or, I saw you in the hallway on the way, and now all of a sudden we have this conversation. We go, oh, wow, okay, that's cool. Those face-to-face innovation moments, they need to be actually structured and planned when we're working remotely. And I think in a way that makes them a little bit more focused. So, I don't know. I see the benefits of both. I love the spontaneousness of something when people are together face-to-face. And yet at the same time, I think remotely, you can do it. And it actually works just as well.
How can someone become a better communicator?
Well, good questions. For me, the first step is, how am I receiving? And what am I receiving? I was talking about this last night for some things. The left side of our prefrontal cortex, which I think is the medial prefrontal cortex, is always aware, listening, seeing, smelling, all of the senses. That's where the information's coming in. The right brain is the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. That is where it is being processed against what we already know. The issue is, a lot of times what happens is someone says something and we go, oh, I know about that. And the next thing you know, we're over here thinking about all the things we know, and we've missed the last 4 words the other person has said. So for me, being a better communicator is just, how do I keep externally focusing on the other person? What do they want? What are they saying? Am I sure that's what they're saying? Can I confirm that? What else might be going on that maybe they're not saying? Like, the more I can focus on the other person as opposed to focusing on all the things I know and all the ideas in my head, that's the first step of being a better communicator.
So focus, like myself, if I'm doing deep work, I'm reading focus, I can't, I got to be quiet.
Right.
I know plenty of people have like 2 TVs on or radio, talking to someone else. Like, why are people's brains so different, right?
I don't know. And I think also we've gotten to that now with the whole sense of multitasking, which actually isn't fully multitasking, which is kind of based off of computers, from the 1960s. Like, we can do 2 tasks at once. Your brain can't. Your brain can do 1 at a time. And we can hold 5 to 7 items in our brain before we start to lose them. With the way that our world has gotten so fast and so fragmented, I mean, even like you look at TikTok and it's like seconds. That sort of being able to focus on something, I think, gets lost. I know, even going back to acting, something my acting teachers had talked about when they first started training people, it was like, oh, I noticed people are small because they're used to looking at TVs. And then over the years, people's attention started to get smaller because they were on laptops. And now people's attentions are even smaller because they're on phones. So we've been narrowing our attention and narrowing our attention span to get smaller and smaller with the devices we have, as opposed to what else is happening? What else is happening in the world? Are we actually open and aware of that? Can I see the 20 people in this room or 200 people in this room and be aware of like, oh, that's happening back here. Cool. Just being aware. I'm fascinated when people are like, I need the radio on and the TV. And then I'm like,
yeah,
oh man, that drives me insane.
I work out of like coffee shops once in a while, but I'm like doing so. I like for maybe I'm doing bullshit work, right? Nothing really focused. I'm just there to be there.
Sure. But
I know people go to Starbucks or coffee shops and like doing deep work. Like, how do you do it, right? All these distractions and noises, and like I can't do it.
I can't do that. And even if I do, I found myself, if I do have music, it has to be something where it's like there's no words.
Yeah.
Or it's in another language or something. Something that it's just like, it's just background soothing to keep me calm. That's about it. But it's too much distraction.
So what's your process of picking a client? Because all clients, are not good clients, right? How do you go? What's your process for picking one?
For me, it kind of comes to a feel, to be honest. I look at what is it you want? I had one a while ago. This was a number of years ago, where they were like, we need your help with this. We've got people who are really like siloing and they're saving resources and they're keeping it from each other. And there's not a lot of communication, all these things. And when I sat down with the team, the CEO and the VP and everybody, at one point, I forget who it was challenging me. I think it was the CEO was going like, and we've got this person. What are you going to do about that person? What are you going to do about that person? What are you going to do about that person? And I finally had to go, I'm not going to do anything, because if they don't want to change, I can't help them. At some point, we can provide training, we can provide coaching, but if that person is still being the asshole that they are, you need to do a cost-benefit analysis to see whether or not that person is actually going to be helping your company move forward. And the entire room went kind of silent. Like, I'm just the guy walking in and saying, like, here's this. But I kind of got frustrated, and I was like, you have to do that. And afterwards, when I left, I talked to the HR person and said, I hope that's okay. And they were like, no one has been able to say that to them, so thank you. I'm like, great, good. But so in those moments, I kind of go, what you're asking me to do is almost be your HR person, and that's not my job. And boy, oh boy, if you want me to do that, you're going to pay me a lot more. That's a much higher price ticket.
Has this ever happened where like the CEO or the leadership said, hey, do this workshop, my people like, and they pretty much like shit on the people, like, people not doing their job, blah, blah. But then during the workshops, the people like kind of no, it's not us, it's the CEO, right? And how do you like balance that?
Yeah. I think, and that's the difficulty, I think, when I'm working with a lot of CEOs, which I work with a lot of CEOs in various different things, you model the behavior. So I've seen it before too, where I was doing a workshop and the CEO was actually in the workshop with us and had said, really excited to be here for everybody. This is really wonderful. We've got a whole day. We're going to be working together and really wonderful stuff. And about half an hour into it, all of a sudden his phone rang and he's like, okay, well, I'm going to go take this. You guys keep going and I'll be back.
Never come back.
And and never came back. And you watched everyone's faces just go, oh, okay. And so it's that moment of like, we've allocated this time, we've put ourselves out there, we're going to do this, but you're not willing to. I had a group a while ago that I was working with that they were like, we want to do the lower level managers, we want to do the mid-level managers, but not the upper managers because they know what they're doing. And I said, I'll be honest with you, like, I will help you out. I will do the workshops. This is all going to fail. And they were like, what? And I'm like, it's all going to fail because you have upper level managers who don't understand the communication structures that we're building on the mid-level and the lower level. And so it's not going to stick. You got to have everybody aligned. Like, you need your upper level managers also reinforcing this. You need your CEO also reinforcing this. This has to be a corporation-wide change, because if it's not, then it's just, oh, great, we're doing a lot of talking. Who cares?
So all the stuff you do, the workshops, the training, how can this improve sales at a company?
Oh, improve sales?
Mm.
Yeah. When I work on sales too, it's that, how are you actually showing up and listening? I find a lot of sales teams, especially that I work with, do a lot of what I like to joke about, the show up and throw up. Like I right? Like, I have all this information and I'm so excited about what I do, and maybe it's my own exuberance or whatever it is, but it's like I meet with the client and go, yeah, and just like continue to download, as opposed to, hey, tell me about what it is. Tell me about what you need. And then the problem is, I think a lot of salespeople who actually do that, once they hear that first need, they go, oh, great, let me tell you how our things can be positioned to help you with that need. That's great, but that was the first need. Maybe it wasn't the real need. Tell me more about that need. Tell me more of what's going on here. So how does that, what does that feel like? What's this? If you really get to the point of being a strategic advisor where you are asking more questions and kind of uncovering things even that people may not have known, at that point, as I say to sales teams, sometimes you are the market differentiation. Like, you may have competitors who are charging less, but if they're like, you know what, man, I'd really rather work with you. You're the one they're going to go to because they trust you. You listen to them. You've helped to uncover things that they didn't even know they needed. You can provide the services that are there, and maybe even you can't provide all the services, but they still like you and they trust you more than they trust the guy who showed up and threw up. There we go. That's the sale. You've just got to be human. You got to be real. You got to ask questions.
How can people overcome sales objections? I mean,
objections are just another, like, it's another offer. It's another yes and. You've given me like, oh, we can't do this because of this. Oh, cool. Yeah. Well, that's great to know. Thank you. So tell me more about that. What is it that's this? And tell me more about this. And you can actually like find out more to see what's behind that objection. For me, an objection is like, that's a gift. It's an absolute gift. Especially when somebody says, well, we don't have the resources for that. Oh, Cool. All right. So I'm hearing you don't have the resources for that. And this is what these pieces are. So let's go through what the costs would be and then what the savings would be. And then also let's look at your projections of what we could do if we're able to accomplish this. Like there are ways to get through every single thing. I think the issue is immediately going like, oh, there's an objection. So there's nothing we can do. Right. We're done here. Yeah. Thanks. Find out more.
What's your advice on getting on someone's counter? Like, there's like cold calling, cold emailing, LinkedIn, all these different avenues that try to reach out to someone, right? But how do you actually do it, right? Because like people are busy, right?
Hell yeah.
And a lot of times, I mean, like me, for example, I get at least 10 LinkedIn messages a day from someone in Bangladesh about I can make your podcast better.
Exactly.
Or YouTube better, right?
Yeah.
No. Like, so how do you like cut all the noise, so to speak, and like make that contact? Or is this a matter of luck?
I don't think it is. But again, like someone's contacting you going like, hey, I can make your podcast better. I can make your website better. I don't know you. There's no relationship. Now, if you are able to go, oh, by the way, I worked with some of the people who you might know. Here's some of this stuff and this stuff. Actually, you know what? I'd love to even like, if you're interested, I could just connect you with them and they could tell you what I did. If you want to if there's some sort of a relationship, that gets more. And the other piece you say to salespeople all the time, like I think we know, the cost of getting a new customer is exponential as opposed to how do I retain the customers I have and how do I get them to then refer me to other people, which then can build it. Like it's all about relationship. If we're actually being real with people and making relationships, they will refer me and I will get more work. I don't have to do this cold calling. I just don't.
The best one I ever had was I got a LinkedIn message with someone, right? And at first I was kind of skeptical.
Yeah. He
said, hey, he's a LinkedIn something. He said, I can help grow your LinkedIn profile, right?
Yeah.
And like, so I have like 20,000 followers, right? So I'm kind of skeptical, right? Like, what can you do for me, right?
Yeah.
And he said, I'm sure you looked at my LinkedIn profile, I only have 700. But then he sent me the links to all the people who helped out, right? All of them had like 50,000 plus followers. He said, I'll focus on getting followers for my clients versus me, right?
Yeah.
He had all the social proof, right? He said, here's a number for them to reach out to if you want to. Like, well, I'm not interested, but man, that's the best one I've ever seen, right?
There we go. Right. Which is interesting. It's like, well, I'm not doing this for myself.
Yeah.
But let me show you the people I've worked with, and that's this.
And I noticed I'm not interested, but man, I got to give it to you. It's like fucking top notch. Like,
yeah, hell
like,
yeah. Yeah.
So you usually get all the time, like people like, let me go to Instagram, or let me go to this. And like, you got 2 followers. Like,
right. You got 2 followers and your account was started last week. Really? Am I really?
Yeah. Or just like the same, I'm a business coach, but I have I just graduated with my bachelor's in business administration.
Oh man, and that sort of thing too. Spinning back to a bunch of different things. I find the same kind of thing happens a lot for acting training. You've got people who is like, I took a class and here it is, and now I'm teaching. No, man, you got to work. You got to do that work. You got to be on the boards. You have to actually have the experience to be able to walk in and go and teach. And if you don't have that experience, then what are you teaching besides what someone told you? And now you're just parroting it back. Like I don't understand that. Like if you have a brand new business degree and you're like, yeah, I'm going to coach. You don't know what it's to actually do the business.
Are you going to coach a freshman?
Right. Who are you going to coach? Like you don't have that experience. If you don't have the chops, why are you out there coaching people? What
is social listening?
My friend Marilyn Page out of Colorado, she's an old friend of mine. I went to high school with her, and she's the one that actually turned me on to this. The whole idea of social media really is about how am I shouting into the void? How am I continuing to tell people about what I'm doing? As opposed to, well, let's see what people are talking about. And then being able to go, oh, wow, that's really interesting. Let me share this, or let me actually comment on your thing to do this. The way she puts it, which I love, is if you think about it, social media is like a dinner party, right? If I show up and just talk about myself, everyone's going to be like, I hate you and I don't want to talk to you anymore. But if I actually show up and I start commenting on what other people are saying and then refer it back to something, then that's actually being real and having a conversation. So that whole idea of social listening is, how are we listening more on social media than we are posting? being able to be available when you see it. Like I saw something today. One of the guys I work with, I haven't seen him for a little bit, and he grew a beard and has like a big mustache. It's this way. And I'm like, where the hell did that come from? Like you've got to comment on stuff. You've got to be responding to what other people are posting and then hopefully starting a conversation. That's social listening. And I think that's really the purpose of social media in a lot of ways.
Can someone be like a CEO or a leader or a senior director of something so long and be so good at it that they do not need any more leadership training?
I don't think so. And I say it because the world changes. Change is our only constant. So it's just one of those things. The world changes. An example, the new people that you're hiring are a new generation of people. If I don't start to think about how I'm going to interact with them, or I still interact with them the same way that I interacted with my older generation of boomers, that ain't going to work. So even as the CEO, I think we have to continually go, okay, what's new? What do I need to learn today? I think that business, life, the world, it's dynamic. We have to stay on the edge of continually learning.
So let's say you're doing one workshop in Seattle, Washington.
Yeah.
Another one in Mobile, Alabama, and one in New York City.
Yeah.
Does the different culture or backgrounds, those societies and locations change the aspect of the workshop?
I think so. Yeah. I think the different groups do, without a question. An example was doing one in Charlotte, North Carolina, and 2 or 3 people in that group had said to me, like, I've wanted to go to Seattle, but I'm afraid. And I'm like, it's beautiful. You're going to love it. It's going to be great. And they're like, yeah, but everything I see on the news. And I'm like, it's going to be beautiful. Don't worry about it. You're going to love it. But then you realize that's this is the feel that I have in this area, or what I hear or what I know. Well, okay, I'm from there. So allow me to tell you what it's like. It's gorgeous. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be great. You're going to have amazing food. You're going to see some amazing stuff. It's wonderful. Don't listen to the hype, but I think in different places, yeah, people have different perspectives, ideas, the way they've grown up, their backgrounds. So it's just tailoring everything to what that group needs.
Can someone be taught to be a great improv person, or is this like a natural ability?
Oh no, you can learn it. Okay. It's a learned skill. I think almost everything is a learned skill, to be perfectly honest. Like you said, the kid playing guitar. Are you willing to put in the time? Are you willing to actually practice? Are you willing to put yourself out there and try it? And the more you do it, the better you get. The more you do it, the better you get. It's putting the reps in,
And I think you said you get most of your customers through referrals, word of mouth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Crazy.
So really no marketing plan, nothing like that, just word of mouth.
Not a whole lot.
Okay.
To be honest, it's people who I know who refer me, or things where all of a sudden someone, on the few times that people have contacted me out of the blue, they've been like, because I saw you worked for these people. Mm-hmm. So it is sort of just all continues to kind of flow from there. I probably should do marketing. I probably should. I will think about that as we continue.
So let's suppose you do a workshop for a company, right?
Yeah.
And let's suppose like you won't feel like you did the job, it was successful. Like you don't want to feel right, like man, like I don't like the vibe. It's like don't do it. They come to you and say, "Oh, we do another workshop in 2 months." You say, "Okay, as long as they pay me, I'll put these feelings aside." Or you're like, "Okay, the vibe wasn't right. It wasn't feeling right. I have to turn you down."
I think sometimes what I start to do is look at myself and go, "Why wasn't the vibe right? What did I do, or what could I have done differently that would have changed that?" So, I mean, in a lot of ways, I'm always kind of looking at, what did I do that was different? What could I do different? What did I not read in this room that didn't make the vibe correct? So yeah, for me, it's also that, like, if somebody comes back and goes, "We want you to do another one in 2 months," I'm like, okay, cool. All right. What are we doing this time? Like, how do I adapt? What do I change? What alters? What needs to happen? And, is it new exercises? Is it a new way of approaching people? Is it letting people do things in a different way? That's just fascinating to me.
And do you have other people that do the workshops for you as well? Or you're the only one doing the workshops?
No, I've got a couple other people who work with me.
And so how do you go back to when you first hired them? Like, how do you train them up to do the work? Of course, you don't want to do exactly like you are. They want to have their own personality and stuff. But how do you make sure they stay within the parameters of what you're trying to do?
I will usually, when I've talked to a client, I've been like, "This is what we're looking at," and then we'll put together a curriculum, and then I will hand that curriculum to them. But then also, I trust them in the room. Like, if I said before when I've trained other people, I trust you in the room to figure out what that group needs, because I'm not there, but you are, and you're seeing whatever you're seeing. So if that's what you're saying, great, pivot, man, make it happen. Like you are in control of this, and I trust that you're willing to do that. And I guess when it comes to that trust, why do I trust them? Because I've worked with them for a while. We've talked about it, I know your skills. I know your chops. You're not just someone showing up, like you said, like, hey, I just got my degree and I'm a coach. Like I know who you are. I know your chops. I know what you're able to do. I've worked with you before. I've partnered with you before. We've been together on workshops for large groups. So I'm willing to let you go do this, and this would be great.
So during the year from January to December, is it like, do you have like a surge period? Like, you do like 80% of your work in 2 months, or is that pretty much even throughout the year?
Fairly even throughout the year, except that then when fiscal years end.
Yeah, the budgets and stuff. Yeah.
Right. All of a sudden, it's either there's two things that happen, and it depends on where fiscal years end for various different organizations. One thing is my fiscal year's about to end, and I have this training budget, and I haven't used it. Oh, crap. Quick, we need to do something. Then the next one is the new fiscal year has started, and I have a training budget. Hey, let's use that now. So right around those times is where you tend to find some things. Like September, October tends to be fairly busy. Because it's like, oh crap, we got to do something. Oh no, okay, hey, new year. So those kind of spaces.
And I'm guessing you have like at least one workshop every month?
Yeah, at least. Yeah.
So let's suppose, like how long would you have to go without workshops you can start work? Like suppose you went what month was this? Is March. Suppose you went April, May, and June, no workshops. Start marketing, maybe start marketing then, or.
We'll start making some phone calls at that point. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, to figure things out. Having worked for myself for years, I'm used to that sort of like you do a job and then, here's this. And so that ebb and flow of being an independent contractor, I think is just something that I've gotten used to, and running a company. So you figure out how to make that ebb and flow sort of even out somewhere in the middle. And, if you're following your 12 over 12 moving monthly averages and you start to realize you've had 3 months that go downhill, you go, yeah, we got to do something here. I mean, you're tracking.
So back to public speaking, any tips or advice for someone to become a better public speaker?
Yeah. I feel like a lot of times when people are speaking, the nervousness that sort of happens, the tension is because they're like, well, I'm up here and everyone's staring at me, and that's maybe because I'm the most important person here because I'm giving this. As opposed to, it's really not about you. It's about your audience. Like I said in the workshops, the same thing. It's not about me. It's not about the curriculum. It's about the audience. Am I providing them with what they need? I'm here for them. Sometimes even that thought process of, what does your audience need? What's in it for them? What am I thinking about? Have I actually put this message into something that they care about? Am I also then thinking about how do I want them to think and feel about this message? That sort of stuff then starts us to think about them, and we're externally focusing now rather than thinking on the fact that I'm sweating and I'm freaking out and my heart rate is going up and my pupils are dilating and, like all those things that happen to us physically. If we can think externally, that helps. I was showing people this the other night. Something in your hand. When you hold something in your hand, you're just taking in the information. Like, is it smooth? Is it rough? Is it cold? Is it warm? But now I'm focusing on the pen, and that stops me from focusing on the fact that I'm freaking out. And like I was talking about with the two halves of your prefrontal cortex, I'm now focusing externally on something about information coming in, as opposed to, oh my God, did I say the right thing? And wait a minute, that person just yawned. Holy crap. And like we get into our own head too much, as opposed to what am I seeing? What am I hearing? What's here? What's externally happening? What do I feel in my hand? I tell people to put their feet flat on the ground, especially virtual work. Put your feet flat on the ground. And they're like, oh, okay. And it's like two things. Number one, now you're thinking about your feet and you stop thinking about the fact that you're freaking out. And then also it puts your body in natural alignment and you're breathing. So now you're breathing. Great. Which is another one that just helps you learn how to breathe, Yeah,
I think one thing people get when they public speak, like, but suppose you're in front of a crowd and you're speaking, right? People are going to presume that you're an expert at improv, right?
Right.
Maybe you are, maybe you're not, right? But they're going to assume that you know what you're talking about, right? Now, like that person speaking in front of a crowd might mess it up and prove they're not an expert, right? But in this moments, they're going to assume, okay, Jason Cavs talking about HR. He knows what he's talking about. You know, John Brown's talking about firefighting. He would not have been picked to speak in front of us. He wasn't a quote unquote expert, right?
Right.
I believe. Another two with me, like I'm an introvert. Like I hate small talk, but I love talking in front of people, right?
Yeah.
For some reason, right? And for me, it's always like if I'm talking in front of a crowd of people, if I'm like nervous and like kind of like, oh man, what am I doing? Let me get out of this. I think I always do well. The time where like overconfident, it's no big deal. I always bombed.
Oh no!
Yeah. If I'm really nervous, I do good. If I'm like, yeah, this is no big deal. It's like indicator. Get nervous because you about to bomb this. Yeah.
Which is kind of cool because that means that also there's the sense of like, all right, let's do this.
Yeah.
Like the sort of the battle, the like, oh man, all right, I'm fully aware, as opposed to no man, it's cool.
Yeah.
You know, like if I am back on my heels and I'm leaning back going like I'm the expert here, whatever.
Yeah.
Then yeah, you're gonna bomb as opposed to
every time.
Okay, man, what's going on? What am I aware of? What's happening? You know, that awareness I think that's key. And I find that's not a space that a lot of people enter into. You know?
Yeah. Me too. Whenever it even with a podcast, right? Like every time someone's on a podcast, I do a speaking thing.
Yeah.
About 10 minutes before, I like, man, I hope they'll throw up. Like, how do I catch? If I want to, I just disappear, what would happen, right?
Yeah.
Of course, I always like get over and I talk and it's all fine. But yeah, like 10 minutes before, like I get these nerves, like, man, can I set the building on fire?
Right.
Let me go pull the fire alarm. You know.
Yeah. Bill Hader from Saturday Night Live, and then he did the whole Barry, that show Barry. He wrote Barry and the idea because he said Saturday Night Live every time before they started, he would throw up, like every night. You know, so it was like every Saturday Night Live that they'd go perform, he'd go throw up beforehand because he got so nervous. That sort of thing. I mean, that's an extreme of like, you get so nervous, but at the same time, I think that nervousness is, okay, cool, what are we doing?
Yeah, all that energy you built up, and then how do you release it in a positive way? Like here the athletes all the time before a big game, they go throw up or do something like that, you know?
Right, yeah. I was working with a group at Nike a while ago, and it was fascinating working with them because they're all, you know, like, these are people who like, oh, I have a 20-minute lunch. I'm going to go run for 15 of it, and then I'll throw some food in my mouth. You know, like that level of like, I'm athlete, you know, work here. And every single thing I kept throwing at them, they were like, cool, what's next? Cool, what's next? Cool, what's next? And everything was like challenge, like every challenge, they just kept rising to it and getting more excited about it. And that's that level of like, yeah, stay nervous. I don't know.
So does the industry or the revenue company matter? Or when you do a client, does the industry matter or the revenue amount? Of course, they have to have enough money to pay you, but
yeah.
Does it matter if they're $1 million company or $100 million company or what the industry is? You
know, I don't think so. For me, then it's just a matter of, okay, well, then what do you do? What is that so that I can understand it? Because again, if people start asking me questions about how they're going to use it, I'd love to have at least one or two examples. For some clients that I've worked with too, I've asked them for like, give me a scenario so that then we can go, let's talk about these skills. Let's practice these skills. Let's do great. Now this is a real scenario that I've received. How are we going to use these skills in that scenario? So that we get that idea of practical application to what it is based on whatever you do. I think that's key because again, if it's not applicable, then what are we here for? What are we doing? If I walk away from this and go, yeah, that was loads of fun. You know, like it's got to be something you can take away that you're actually going to implement or try or think about.
That's a good question. Like, how do you keep people like a lot of people they'll communicate with their face, but you probably don't want to communicate with your face because like you might say yes and your face is saying like, hell no, you're doing this. Like, yep. How do you train people like kind of like, you know, don't talk to your face, so to speak, you know?
You know, but then the opposite happens as well, right? Like a lot of times when I first meet people, this is the thing that they're doing is like, oh, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
That's really, you know, like they're not open and aware. They're not making eye contact. Their body is held. So as a result, when they're telling me like, I'm really excited about being there, you know, like, it's like, what do you mean? I'm not hearing it. So I think the opposite is true as well. For me, that moment that somebody is like, yeah, okay, let's go ahead and do this. It's like, cool, thank you so much for saying that. You know, I'm feeling like there's still a couple other questions that you might have because while you said yes, you shook your head from side to side no, right? Like there's something else that I'm listening to, which isn't just your words. There's like your full body language or something else is going on or people going, yeah, okay, yes, this sounds like a great idea. Really? Because what I'm seeing is something different. So let's keep asking questions. Let's keep trying to figure out what's going on here. Let's uncover more needs.
What's a daily routine like you use? Like, do you like wake up in the 3 a.m, meditate for an hour, go for a 10-mile run, maybe use some like egg white omelets,
Have you seen how big I am?
go read a book of philosophy, like what's your like daily routine, or is it every day different?
A lot of it's different. I'd say the only real daily routine piece is walking the dog, which is important. Getting the dog out at least once or twice a day, which is also a great time to sort of just get out and reflect on life, see those things. But I don't, and I mean, I thank you for saying like meditating and reading a book. I wish I could say that. I'll think about those things, but I wish I could say that.
So how do you do your routine every day? You have a calendar you follow, or you wake up every day, I got to do this today? Like how you do all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. For me, I'll wake up and then actually go, what do I have to do today? I mean, my calendar is telling me like, okay, here's things you have, like you have this virtual workshop, or you have to catch a plane because you're going to be teaching here or something like that. Wonderful. I still do the like wake up and go, what do I need to accomplish here today? Let's the, 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 items. I tend to get a little practical on those things too. Like if it's like, make a list, I will write down, make a list. And then I'll go, check mark. I did it. Great. But that makes me feel like I did a win, like, yeah, I did it. Right. Tie your shoes. Yeah. Yay. I like making a list in the morning because that gives me a feel of like, this is what I want to do today. And I don't know, I think it just gives me a little bit of direction so that I then know what it is.
Do you use any tools besides pen and paper to keep track of all the stuff?
God, I should, but I don't.
Pen and paper still? Okay.
Yeah.
So let's suppose you have a list of 10 things to do, right? And suppose every day you do 1 to 4.
Yeah.
And every day a new 1 to 4 comes on. But 5 through 10 stay the same, right? When does there come a point where you say, okay, 5 or 10 minute list like 2 months, I haven't done it yet. Or you're like, okay, I need to take this off the list because obviously I'm doing it. Or you're like, okay, I put this on the list for a reason. I need to keep it on there until I find the time to take it off.
Yeah. At some point, I always look at those things and I'm like, I've dragged this for like 3 days, 4 days. And one of the things I love to tell people is maybe it's time to eat the frog. I didn't want to do this, but guess what? It's time to do it now because I'm dragging it and it's going to keep dragging. So just do it. Just eat the frog. It's something I didn't want to do, but guess what? Just do it now. Great. Now it's checked off and we can move on. Otherwise, it tends to just stay in your subconscious. And then you're in the middle of the night and you're waking up going like, oh, right, I got to remember to do that and this thing, and those kind of things then I think get in the way of you actually being more productive. So sometimes they just got to get marked off.
So funny story. I was just in Vietnam for a little bit.
Yeah.
And I went to a friend's girlfriend's house, to the parents' house for dinner. And we had frog for dinner.
Was it tasty?
It is. But the only thing it's like the frogs actually have a lot of bones. I realized.
Yeah.
Frog legs or no, but the actual frog itself has so many bones, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I've actually ate a frog before.
Oh my God. See, I saw him at a restaurant once when we were in France, and I was like, frog legs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Frog is okay. The actual body of the frog has so many bones.
Really?
Yeah, it's a lot of bones. I didn't think about it yet.
Yeah, I know. I can't see how you carve a frog. See, I don't know.
they did it for me, so I was cool with that.
Yeah.
So is this your first book that you've written?
Yeah, it is.
So why even write a book? What's the purpose of writing a book? Is it like a bucket list thing you had, or is it for the business? Talk about that.
Kind of. A little bit of both. It's something I've been wanting to do for a while, and it's something I had tried to do a long time ago, and then just haven't really been able to sit my ass down in the chair and write, and make it happen. And then also I wanted to have something of like, if I believe in these things that I'm teaching, and I think they're beneficial, then I can only reach the people that I could reach in the workshops that I'm doing. How do you make something that could reach more people? So if I believe in it and I think it actually could help people, then that means you got to get out to a wider audience. And that means writing a book and putting it out there and seeing if it does get out to a wider audience and doing what you can to just try and share it with people. I mean, the goal is kind of how do you be of service? And if you can only be of service to these 20 people at one point, that's great. But the book could be of service to a lot more people.
So from the day you had the idea to write the book to the day it got published, how long was that time period? Like a year, 6 months?
Yeah, 15 months or so. The publisher, you had a conversation with Michelle Moffat.
Yeah.
So Michelle and I were in the same cohort, the same publisher.
Okay.
Working with it. But man, they are taskmasters, the publisher. So they are like,
And they want the money, right?
oh man, well they're like,
They want to return. They want the ROI, right?
yep, and they are like, okay, so here's the thing: you've got your editor, your developmental editor, wonderful. And by the way, I need 2,000 words by next week. Make it happen. And you're like, and then you do it, and then they look at it and they go, here's all the things that are wrong with it. And then you go, okay, well let me go back and fix that. And like, no, keep moving forward. And so you end up with your book, and there's so much red ink in it. It's ridiculous, and it's like it's just overwhelming. And then you start working through it with a revisions editor. And
so, how do you set your ego aside? Most people like this. I gave you my best work, and you basically get an F-, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you work through that?
Oh man, it's a battle to your ego in so many different ways. And even at the same time you're writing it, you're just like, I'm writing it, and then I read it and I go, this is crap. Who am I kidding? Like, what am I doing here? And then you keep doing it more. One of the things that one of my editors kept saying was, perfect is the enemy of done. Mm-hmm. And it's that piece again of like, I could sit here and I could revise this thing for the next 25 years. And at that point, who are you sharing it with? As opposed to get it done, put it out there. There'll be mistakes in it. And then maybe you could go later like, oh, here's new things that I found based off of that. I mean, it just has to be a snapshot in time of where you are. It's never going to be the be all and end all.
Yeah. I know a guy, good friend of mine. He started a podcast maybe 5 years ago along with me.
Yeah.
He actually did 30 podcasts. Didn't release any of them because they were never good enough for him. Something always wrong. He always tweaked it or whatever. Like, dude, like, what are you doing?
Yeah, you got to let it go.
Just stopped doing it all, right? So, man, and he had really good talks with people, right?
Yeah.
Like 30, it's like just never released them because they were never quote unquote good enough.
Well, and then there's the question of, so I'm judging in my head that they're not good enough. And yet I don't know what my audience might want.
Yeah.
They might look at it and go, oh man, that thing was that was exactly what I needed, that we never knew because I'm too busy judging it.
He's like, he's an audiophile. He would hear every little thing. Like, dude, what are you talking about?
No,
I can't hear this. No one can hear this, right? Yeah, you don't hear this. Deek, deek.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? There's nothing there. I just hear you talking. No,
and then
I
a
can
plane
hear
went overhead. Did you hear that? Yeah. No. Okay.
Yeah.
That one's crap. Yeah.
Yeah. It's insane.
Sometimes you got to let go of that stuff, though. I mean, that's not.
No.
So
the title. How do you come up with the title? Was it like a moment of brilliance? The light bulb popped up, or just like you actually like to do some research on this?
It was a little bit more of just from conversations. I mean, again, that idea of innovation, like more brains than mine. I had gone through with my friend Marilyn Page, my marketing person, a lot of like, what is your mission? What do you believe in? What are your vision? What do you actually, what do you believe in, and how do you want to do this thing, and what's the vision of what you do? And through those conversations, and then conversations with the publisher as well, and talking about what exercises I was doing with clients. And at some point, someone said, and I think it was actually part of the publisher, I think it was Eric, who's the head of manuscripts, said, it sounds to me like you're teaching people how to listen without agenda. And I was like, listening without agenda. Hey.
I like it.
Yeah.
Ding, ding, ding.
And then I started asking people like, okay, well, this is what I'm thinking of. And the minute I started saying the title to people, they were like, wow, that's fascinating. Okay. So, the goal was hopefully if the title grabbed people, then maybe you'll pick up my scribblings on the page and and read it. So
you say you don't really market your business, but I'm assuming you're marketing the book.
Yeah.
How are you marketing the book?
Marketing the book, I had a book launch last night, actually at Seattle Public Theater, which was great. Had an event on Saturday with a little place, Burien, which is near where I live. And I'm doing various other events, a lot of speaking tour stuff. I'm working with the National Speakers Association.
And all this comes out of your own pocket, or the publishers funds it?
It's all out of my pocket.
Okay.
Like, let's push it out there. The other thing in that expectation, like if I wrote the book thinking I'm going to be a millionaire, then I think that's not the purpose to do it.
No, definitely not. Yeah.
Right. The goal of the book is, well, then how do I help people to actually do some of this stuff themselves? My father, I'm actually going to be doing some Rotary clubs coming up soon. My father was really big in Rotary, and they have this thing that they say before every meeting. Everyone recites the 4-way test, which is like, is it truthful? Is it beneficial to all involved? This 4-way test. And I always listened to that and thought, man, if people recited that to themselves every week, how would that change the world?
Yeah.
Just thinking about that. Is it truthful? Is it beneficial to all involved? How will it help people? How will it serve people? And I had that thought in mind a lot when I was reading the book, just that sense of, is it truthful? Is it what I believe? Is it beneficial to people? How will it serve them? How will it help them? So now I just got to go out there and spend some money to tell people that hopefully you'll like it.
So I'm going to assume sometime in the writing process, there were times you got writer's block.
Yeah.
How did you overcome the writer's block?
For me, it was kind of like I had to step away for a little bit, go walk the dog again or something. If I could sit down and I could just, bang through this, but then I'd look at it afterwards and I'd be like, well, that's crap, and none of it works. So I have to sort of be in the mood for it. The other thing that the publisher had done, which was very helpful and I think a little intimidating, they had cohorts. So it's all over Zoom, but it's 6 o'clock in the morning to 9 a.m. in the morning, 'cause it's happening on the East Coast, and you log in and everybody's there, but everybody just has their sound off and you can see them sitting there writing. So we're all there together and you've dedicated these 3 hours that we're all going to spend together. If someone has questions, they'll come off mute and go, hey, I have a question. And people might say something, but then it just all goes back to silent. But you can see these other people are all writing and you're like, oh, damn, I better write too. I don't know.
I at least have to fake I'm writing, right?
Yeah, well, but there's something there of like, I don't know, it kind of forced you to go, wow, I can commit to this, or I can at least spend the time. The peer pressure.
For those 3 hours, did you find you actually did some good writing those 3 hours?
Yeah, I did. Okay. And whether or not it's because I, felt intimidated and I had to, or I don't know, but it really helped me. I was trying to log into those as much as possible.
So the title's listener is what's like the basis premise for the book, or so like the foundation, so to speak.
Yeah, the foundation for the book, I think, in a lot of ways, is the whole idea of how do we listen? What does it mean to effectively listen? And that is kind of where the sort of book begins. And the next step is sort of like, well, then what could we do about it? The third part of the book, which is, kind of the way that I operate too. I want it to be practical. I want it to be pragmatic in a way. So the third part of the book is actually exercises. And it is written down like, this is the exercise. Here's how to do it. Here's a checklist for you afterwards. I want it to be a little bit of a workbook as well as a book. And then you do the exercises. Then the fourth part is, well, what would be the impact if we could actually do that? And so for me, that kind of idea was seeing all the things in our world where we just don't effectively listen. Like you said, social media. I've seen other ones too, of just like politics, where it's more about how do I tell you what I want to tell you than it is about how do I actually listen to what you're saying and think about what you might really need or want.
So from your point of view, like this is what, March 18th. Let's fast forward to March 17th, 2026.
Yeah.
What needs to happen for you to say this book was successful? A certain number of sales, certain number of drivers for the business, or like it'll just be a feeling you get?
Probably more drivers of the business. I mean, I'd love to see more people read it and then go, oh, this will be interesting. Let's actually, do exercises here, or let's have Andrew come in and work through some other things. To me, that's kind of that's the measure of success for it. Hell, I'd love to log in and see 9 million copies sold. Woo! That'd be great. I don't know, unless Oprah picks it up and wants to read it, but for me, it's more the sense of if it could make people go, yeah, that'd be interesting. Let's do this, or let me actually try this, or let me see what it would do to change my organization. That'd be lovely. And the impact of it too. I wrote it with a sense of businesses. How do you help your company? How do you help your business? The more people that have been reading it and getting back to me, they're like, I actually tried this at home and it worked really well with my spouse. And it was like, cool. Okay. And then I've had people go like, this worked really well with my kids. I'm like, well, I don't know. I just have a dog, like it's just my wife and I and the dog. But if it helped you out in other parts of your life too, then that's amazing. I don't know what the ramifications of the book will be, I guess is the bottom line of it. Yeah, I'd love it to see some, a measure of success for me would be more workshops, more book sales. Lovely. If there's a measure of success somehow that I could find that people said, my life has changed because I heard more, that's brilliant. It'd make me happy.
So 2 scenarios, right?
Yeah.
One scenario, worst case, like you get no sales from the book, no drivers at all. How do you deal with that? And the second one, I think more challenging is what if it does hit off? Like, suppose you do have 10 million sales and you do have 5 million drivers to the business, right? How do you handle that success, right? How do you have the plan to hire people? Like, what if it does bring all this stuff in? How do you handle that?
Yeah, I mean,
it's a good problem to have, right? But,
hell yeah, I would love that. I know a bunch of people who I could very easily talk to, who I work with on various different bases. I could just go, we need to talk. Here's this. This is what we're putting together. You'd be the independent contractor going out to teach these things. We'd talk about the curriculum. But again, there are people who I trust that I know. I know they would bring not only their expertise and their brilliance to it, but they'd be able to present what is in the book and what the ideas are. So it's a little bit of both. On the worst case scenario, I don't know. I still feel like I wrote it. You know what I mean?
Like, you're a published author, right?
Bottom line,
you're a published author.
I wrote the damn thing. So there we go. I don't know. I don't feel like there's a whole lot of, maybe nothing happens from it whatsoever. I still wrote it.
Yeah. So suppose a business brings you on, right? Talk about the negotiation, right? I'm sure suppose it's you can do a seminar or webinar or whatever workshop in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you negotiate economy on Spirit Airlines versus first class on United. Motel 6 versus
right.
the 5-star hotel. I'm guessing all that plays in negotiation, right? And how do you work? How do you deal with it? Are you just feel like a standard price list, like you either pay for this or you don't?
I usually do here's what the workshop is, and then here's what, and I will do the research and be like, I admit I'm kind of a whore when it comes to my brands, because I love my points that I get from stuff where someone else is paying for it and I get the points. So it's like, well, here's the nearest Marriott.
Yeah.
And here's the Alaska Airlines, because we're in Pacific Northwest. Yeah. Why would you fly any other airline? Yeah. So, and so it's like, I look at the cost and go, here's the cost of that. Here's the cost of this. Here's what a cost would be to get a car or get a ride or whatever it is. Here's what I would need for food. And then I just go, and this is the travel fee that will not exceed this amount.
Yeah.
So it's just, you're setting a balloon amount. And then if I can stay under that, wonderful. I'll stay under it.
So no, give you all the receipts. No add-on weekend trips to Vegas included in the price.
No. None of that. None of that. But then the other thing that people have been telling me now, which I never thought about with the book, is they go, oh, and by the way, do you want a book for all the participants? Great. Then I'll just include that in the price too. Yeah. Now all of a sudden you've got workshop price, you got your travel price, and then you got your book price. So
if you want to sign an extra $1,000,
hell yeah, I will sign them. That's what that book's worth for you. There we go.
So when you do these workshops, right?
Yeah.
Are you do you control the setup? Do you say suppose there's 100 people, you say, okay, I want this amount of chairs, you want circles, do you control all that too?
As much as I can.
Okay.
Or at least figure out what is possible.
I'm sure speak microphone checks, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I try to control as much as possible. I'll bring my laptop. Mm-hmm. I'm running off of my laptop. Mm-hmm. I have all the connectors. I have everything with me. So it's as much as possible, I'd like to take control of that stuff. If you need me to send it to you beforehand, great. Then this is how I will set it up, and we'll do that, and I'll get it to you beforehand. For some larger groups like Microsoft, it's very specific of we have 3 things happening in that day. Someone's speaking before you, and then there's this workshop, and then someone's speaking afterwards. So I need your slides. I need them in this format. I need this. Great.
Yeah.
But as much as possible, I'd love to control. The room, it just depends on what people have in the room. I prefer, like you said, if there's introverts in the room, it's really wonderful to have things where people are in their own, at a table or at a pod. That's lovely. Just because I don't want people to feel like you're on the spot. Yeah. If it's a smaller group, then we're just kind of in a circle of chairs in the middle of the room. We'll go from there. But
I'm going to guess you try your best at least a couple hours beforehand, check the place out. I'm guessing you never, if it's 1 p.m., you don't show up at 12:59.
No.
You always do some kind of walkthrough, as soon as possible, right?
Oh, I'm known for moving furniture too.
Yeah.
So I walk in and go, yeah, okay, so let's move this stuff back. Let's get this and let's put this here. No. Great. Okay, wonderful. Is that okay? Good. Let's go.
So when you have a client, is the goal make this up maybe get 20% profit, 3% profit? Is it a monetary goal you have each one, or is that just changes?
I think it changes based on what time, the amount of people, all those things. I trying to keep standardized pay rates, and yet at the same time, as I said, a lot of my groups are referrals. So I have a lot of older clients that are just you're charging what now?
You charge $1.99.
Exactly. Wait a minute. Hang on.
Back in 1991, it was $1.99.
Right. It's well, that's not the same anymore. So let's talk about the
airline
new rate.
tickets have gone up just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit.
So, how long have you been doing this?
Wow. I mean, so full-time for myself since about 2017.
Okay.
I've been doing it working with companies, though, since about 2001.
So we'll go back to 2017.
Yeah.
If you went back to your 2017, would your 2017 self say, hey, 2025, you're right on time, you're doing good, or you'll be like, oh man, you know what, you're not meeting your goals? Like, what would 2017 version you say about where you're at right now?
I mean, I think that probably the 2017 version would be like, you should go a little bit further. You should go a little bit further. I know for myself, and I think there's still a level of relaxing. Mm-hmm. Having run the theater company for 25 years and feeling like a lot of pushing, and then I think after COVID too, there's just this sense of like, what are you doing with your life and what are you doing with your time? And how do you want to spend your time and what do you want to do with it? And so, yeah, I think I could be pushing my work a lot more and I could be working a lot more. Now the question is does that take away? Yeah, does it take away from the time with my wife?
And your dog?
Right. Does it take away from the time of doing some art with friends of mine? Does it take away from the things that feed me? And I don't know. I mean, maybe it's also that thing of like, at my age 58, I should be busting my ass and trying to like get as much as possible and then take that time for yourself. But I feel like in some ways I'm kind of like easing into it.
So with a company, what's the goal? Is the goal like just keep on doing what you're doing, or maybe in the future like do some kind of like John Maxwell leadership franchise things for people, or?
Yeah, or get it to the point of with client lists and those things that someone says, wow, I'd love to have your curriculum and I'd love to have these pieces and I'd love to incorporate it into my training organization. I mean, if someone wanted to purchase it lock, stock, and barrel, that'd be great. I can always invent new things. I can build new things. That's what I do.
Any plans to go back on the stage?
Oh yeah, as much as possible. Yeah. We did one thing, not this Christmas, the previous holiday season. I did something in Burien. We just rented a little theater and did it, which was great. We called it Deck the Hallmarks. We showed a Hallmark movie live, but then we recreated parts of it live, on stage. Yeah, so for me, it's been a little bit more of like, again, that one-off thing. Like, yeah, we got a theater for a night. Let's do something fun. Going back into a full-time thing for theater, I don't know about that. I don't know if I'm fully ready to do that, or if I want to, at this point.
So I'm sure there's plenty of people that do what you do, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So why should someone pick you? Make the case for like someone to use you versus all these other options they have.
Yeah, totally. I think the difference, again, market differentiation was I ran a company. By the time I had left, the company was just under $1 million a year. Full-time staff, board of directors, nonprofit, 501c3. I've worked for companies like Microsoft, Apple Computer, Cisco, Salesforce, so I have that experience in corporate. And then also the years of doing it. The same thing as what you were talking about earlier. I find a lot of people who are like, well, I've been doing this for 2 years and now I want to work with companies. And it's like, man, it's not even in your bones yet. Like you got to know it. You got to live it. You have to do it for a while to figure out how it has helped you. And then maybe you could share that with people. But if you don't even know what it's done for you yet, how are you able to go out there and do it? So I think for me, it's those things of, I have the experience of what it's done for me. I have the experience of how it's helped the business. I have the experience of how it's helped other businesses. I have the experience of working with those businesses. And I think that experience and knowledge changes what I teach.
Can you tell us, and this might not even matter,
yeah.
Can you tell us the percentage of repeat business you get? Or is it like, do you workshop, the workshop's done, or do you get repeat business? Or what percentage of that is that?
I'd say either easily 85 to 90% repeat business.
Okay. And do you give them any kind of discount coming back a second time? Like, do you do some of a package deal? Like, one workshop, I'm making the number up. One workshop is $1 million. Yeah. 10 workshops is like $12 million.
I love your numbers. That's great. Yeah, I'm going to adopt those. No, actually, I will do, in other words, if you want to do an engagement and you're like, okay, we want to do 5 workshops over the course of X amount of time, then it's like, great, then we'll discount each one. Okay. But if we're coming in to do one and then you're calling me up, a year or two later and going, let's do it, that's a separate thing. Okay. That's separate. And like, I suppose money was no object for this company, right? Yeah. Suppose this company has all the money they needed, but can a company be too small to use you? Like, suppose only someone don't have 8 people, right, or 5 people. Is that too small? I don't think so. Okay. And it's fascinating to me I worked with a couple companies.
And do you charge based on the number of people, or is it the one set fee?
I charge based on the number of people,
Okay.
and then also what the capacity is,
Okay.
what it can do. There were a lot of companies actually during COVID that were struggling with we were those cool, like, hey, there's a football table and,
Yeah.
kombucha on top and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. And now all of a sudden we're all virtual. And how do we keep that culture?
Yeah, they're not delivering kombucha to your house.
Right, exactly. Right. That ain't going to happen.
They're trying to cut costs. They're trying to survive. Yeah,
Right.
They're not providing food tables and kombucha to everyone's home.
Exactly. And so in those moments, those were smaller companies. They were like, some were like 5-person companies, 10-people companies, but they were still like going, how do we do this? And we need your help. We need your help to do this. So yeah, I think it's the difference of what do people need and how can I help?
So how do you handle this, right? Like, suppose you have a workshop of 50 people. I'm assuming like you give all your contact information on the big screen or whatever.
Yeah.
What do they all like call you or email you later on, or like suppose all 50 emailed you with stuff? Do you like engage with them, or like pretty much they don't contact you?
Oh, and if people have contacted me, or if I've reached out to someone on those things, usually the next step is I'm like, this is wonderful. Like, here's a couple of questions on there, but I'd really love to just set up like a 15-minute or 30-minute, like, can we chat for a minute? And during that chat, again, I'm not really even like, I'm not even going to tell you what we're going to do. I just want to know more of what you want. What are you looking for? What are the problems you're seeing? What's this? What's this? Great. Based off of this, let me put together something and send it to you. And for 2 different things, once I send that to you, now we have a follow-up chance of like, you have a chance to read it. Let's do this. Let's do that. But also that the time that I have with you, I want to spend that time all in discovery. I don't want to sit here and, like I said, show up and throw up and tell you what we can do. I want to know what you need so that then I can actually put together a proposal that is going to fit those needs that hopefully then can help you to take that next step.
So don't give the details, but what's been like the craziest question you had for a workshop, right? Like, and like, and is there anyone like you're like, man, this is too crazy. I can't do this. Like, let's like, they had a best crazy idea. Like you like took the kernel out. Like, can you talk about that?
Right. Oh my God. I don't know if I have seen that sort of, or maybe it's, from my experience of being an improviser, I hear the batshit crazy idea and go, yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could identify one that is really that like, okay, you're way over the top.
Like, I want to do a workshop outside and everyone's like naked and afraid.
Yeah. No, I've never had that. Never had that, but that's good to think about.
And you all these inside, you ever have like any of them outside, like in nature?
Well, sometimes, and actually that has been one before where it's been like, well, it's a beautiful day, so can we all go outside? And I go, okay, well, where's the outside area?
Yeah, define outside.
And it's like, oh, it's right next door, right next to the highway. It's like, well, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
Like if it's an outside area that's like a courtyard that's in the center of this and we still can set it up and still have a whiteboard and have these things, wonderful.
Or like, hey, it's January in Seattle. Yeah. Let's do a cold plunge and do the workshop or in the middle of the Puget Sound at 20 degrees.
That ain't going to work. That ain't going to work that way. Yeah. There still needs to be a space where people can focus.
Mm-hmm. So when you get these clients, are you like really excited? Like suppose you talk about Nike and Hasbro.
Yeah.
Like, having a client like, oh man, I can't wait to work with X, right? Or this excitement level pretty much the same for all of them.
No, I love, especially any of the new clients that come in. Like, I can't wait to work with this, I think I'm also kind of fascinated with, like, I have some coming up from Microsoft coming up soon where, again, they're project managers, people that I know there, who they just kind of keep me on speed dial. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, I have a new team and I need your help. Great. Let's figure out how this team's going to communicate and work together and get these same ideas so they have a shared communication structure. That's always fascinating to me because the leader knows what I can do. Mm-hmm. And then they're kind of keep bringing me in to go, okay, this. So then as they hear me, they're like, Andrew, that changed. Like, wow, that's changed. I'm like, oh yeah, that changed about a year ago. I started doing this differently. And then they're like, wow, okay, that's a whole different. So I get to hear someone who already believes in me so much that they keep hiring me again, but they go, that was different. Whoa, like you just taught me something else. And I love those moments too. Do
you have a dream client? Like I don't know, suppose what's it called, the Juilliard School of Arts came and contacted you, or some Broadway show, or you have a dream client?
Wow. I don't know. I don't know if I do. I'd love to do more that could help anything in the arts. I'm dedicated to that. Like I'm a Berean Arts Commissioner and also one of the co-chairs of the Creative District in that area, which is a statewide designation for creative industries. So anything I can do to further the arts, 100%. For me, a favorite client more is the sense of like, we want to dedicate 6 months to doing this, and we want to measure it from start to finish. And I guess for me, the reason is that is, and definitely egotistical, I get to see the difference between when I came in and when I leave. And that sort of measurement of success is always like, oh, cool. That's helpful.
And are all your workshops, are they all of them in person, or you do some over Zoom?
I do some over Zoom. Yeah.
And so like suppose you have a workshop here in Seattle, there's 50 people all in person.
Yeah.
Another kind of 50 people, they're like all over the place, everything's Zoom, right?
Yeah.
Does the approach change in those two things? How you do it, how's that work?
Yeah, they have to. I mean, just the different medium is always going to be different in that sense of what exercises you can do and the way you can do them. That, like example, there's a lovely game that I love to do about interpersonal communication that involves holding out your hand and putting a card on it that's face down, and then you take the card and you stick it to your forehead so that you could see my card and I could see yours, but you can't see your own card. And then I have people interact with each other based on the suit that's on their card. And it sort of gets into this, how do people interact with each other in that way of status, interpersonal communication? I have not figured out how to do that virtually because there's no way to, because you can see the camera. So, but there's things like that. So if you want to do that same sort of an exercise virtually, I have to adapt it and I have to change it to a different thing. So things are always going to change based on the medium of how it's being delivered.
So I'm guessing like if you have 50 people in person, you can kind of tell who's engaged, not engaged.
Yeah.
But how do you do that over Zoom? How do you tell someone's engaged over Zoom?
I take track. I actually will, I write down, I'm doing a series of things coming up here this week. And I have a whole list of all the participants that are there. And then it's like, oh, great. So let's talk about this. Let me ask where people are. And I'm taking track of who's actually speaking. So then at times it could be like, oh, we're going to doing this. And and I'd love to know this person, like, I'd love to know what you're finding from that. So here, let me ask you these questions. It's like, I will actually start to call people out based on if you haven't responded.
Okay.
Or ask you then to put something into chat as people are putting it in chat. Then I'll also like mark down, yes, they did that. I'm trying to keep in the back of my head who is engaging and who is not engaging. Again, it's not saying that someone isn't involved. They may not be speaking. They may not be putting something in chat, but they're still sitting back going, all right, there might be something, So I have to judge all those things.
And what if someone doesn't not have their camera on? You make them turn it on, or that's some of my pet peeves in meetings. Like people have their camera off. Like, come on now, like you at least turn your camera on.
Right. Because I also know that your camera's not on because you are doing 900 other things.
Yeah.
Which means you're not here. I love doing that in the middle of workshops where I go, so just, we've been on now for about 45 minutes to an hour or so. So how many people have multitasked? Tell me yes or no.
Yeah.
And you watch people go, oh, damn it. But I think it's important for people to understand what the impact of multitasking does for people.
Yeah.
And if you're the leader and people watch you going, yeah, no, tell me about what's going on.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, great. Oh, no, it's wonderful. Yeah, keep talking to me. There's an impact to that that I think is an effect to the entire company.
True. So let me ask you this. Let's suppose you're doing a workshop on, we'll say, September the 1st of this year, right?
Yeah.
When do you start planning for it? Like a month before, 2 months before? Talk about the planning process and put all the stuff together for that workshop on September 1st.
Yeah, about a month.
And we're going to presume that all the money's been worked out, the contract signed, all that's done. That's like when you start actually working on all the details.
Yeah, about a month beforehand, at least for me, because I like to go, again, who is this group? What do they need? And then at that point, putting together like, okay, are we doing interviews? Or are we doing surveys? And if we're doing surveys, then what is the time frame for that survey to come out? And then what is the time frame that I need it done by? So have I sent people here's a survey, here's the reminder, fill it out by this day, here's your final reminder, make sure you fill it out. Then I get to look at that and synthesize it and go, what does this look like? Based off of that, how do I want to change what I think I was going to do? So there's a little bit of process of, filtering it or customizing it based on what I'm getting back from people. And then I like to do a report for people to say, like, I've synthesized that information that I've received beforehand. This is what I got. Sometimes employees will tell me things on a survey that they won't tell, the HR person, or they won't tell the CEO or anyone higher up. So if I can at least capture that and then not give it to them verbatim, because I don't want to, get anyone in trouble, but just synthesize it and be like, this is what I'm hearing as an overall sort of piece. Does that jive with what you're feeling? Or is that new information? Based off of that, what do we need to change?
Has anyone ever come back to you, like CEO come back to you and said, hey, based on feedback or whatever, we fired John Bob,
No,
or vice versa, the company came back and said, hey, based on this, what you did, the board of directors decided to can the CEO.
If they have, I've never heard about it.
Okay.
That's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah. So you take about a month to get stuff started.
Yeah.
Okay, here's one for you. Do you and the client ever, I guess y'all signed an NDA where you don't take their trade secrets, take it someplace else?
Yeah.
And they promise not to take your stuff and do it themselves?
Yeah.
Okay. That's pretty standard practice, I'm guessing.
Pretty standard, but at the same time, a lot of the exercises that I have in the book and exercises that I have out there, they're regular exercises.
Yeah.
If people want to try them on their own, try it.
They don't have you, right?
Right. And that's the other thing.
You're the secret sauce, so to speak.
Kind of. And my level of experience, or my people that I bring in, their level of experience is also going to help to synthesize that exercise and the experience into the actual applicability of how they're going to use it. So the exercises are meant for try it out, and here's this. And hopefully then that helps you down that path. The subject matter expert that you're bringing in to facilitate that is going to help us with that process.
So when you do the workshops, how do you take the feedback and learnings from each workshop to make it the next one better?
Every time at the end, I always do a little and I actually do these on the kind of sheets that I have. Again, I should be working electronically. I'm just a paper and pencil person. It's ridiculous. As it scales up, I know I'm going to have to. I have friends of mine who are like, no, you need this, CRM and all that. But I actually will go after I'm done and go, this is what the experience was. This is this. I found this. If I can remember people's names, it was Susan who really didn't give a shit about what we were doing, or any of that. I will actually take those notes on there so that I have that, because otherwise it will go out of my head. And then I have that available for if something else happens, or if someone asks me what that was, I can go, yeah, let me look at what those are. Here's this stuff. I got file drawers full of useless information at this point, but you never know. Has anyone
ever come back to you and said, hey, Andrew, based on your recommendation for your workshop, I got a promotion, or I did this, or I left for a better paying job, anything like that?
Yeah.
Okay. That has to make you feel good.
Yeah. An interesting one, actually, a little while ago, working with someone who we were talking on how to have difficult conversation, and I was kind of coaching them through this difficult conversation they wanted to have. And based off of that, they actually said, yeah, I decided not to have the difficult conversation. I decided to shift it and actually walk into my boss and say, look, you're not really using me to the best of my potential, so I'm going to move laterally. I've already talked to people. We've already done this, and that's the way that goes. And they said their boss was like,
a lot of guts.
Wait a minute. What are you talking about? And it's like, well, we could have that difficult conversation about why you're not using my talents, or why you're not giving me these opportunities, or why we're not working together properly. Or I can just go, you know what? I think there are other people who might be able to use me to a better thing, because that's where we are. And that's what she chose. And I was, when I followed up with her later, I was like, oh, okay. That wasn't really the outcome we were talking about,
yeah.
But, how do you feel about it? And she's like, I'm lightened, my world feels better. I feel easier, more at ease. I'm like, great. Then if it helped you, then rock and roll. That's where we are.
So we talked about your company some, but can you go into more detail, like why you started the company?
Yeah.
What you focus on now, what your big dream vision for your company is?
Yeah. For me, this all kind of ties back. It ties back to the theater as well. At Jet City, we did, the company had 3 parts, which was performances, and then educating programs. And then the last one was outreach. We did free classes for incarcerated youth and free classes for homeless youth, kids who are going through drug treatment programs. And I think the thing that I kind of learned from that too was that this work we're doing on stage isn't just on stage, it's everywhere out in the world. Working with the homeless kids the first time, you show up and these kids have a hoodie down and they're not making eye contact. And then all of a sudden we're playing games with them. And by the end of it, they're looking up. And I'm like, well, damn, if we can do that half hour, with someone who is in a very volatile situation in their life, what else could happen, or how could we do this? So yeah, for me, it's really that sense of how is it helping? How is it doing something else? And that theatrical concept fits everywhere else in the world. So, yeah, it's got to be in the world. It's got to be in the world.
And so we talk about your book a little bit. Could we talk more about your book, about anything you want to talk about your book?
Yeah. We talked about it a lot, but I don't know. Yeah, the book is some of those exercises. How to effectively listening, the things that get in the way of us being able to effectively listen, the things that are preconceived notions, confirmation bias, the way our brain is wired, being present, being able to just stay curious, all of those pieces, and then exercises for how to do that. So again, pragmatically, like, how do you actually practice it? And then what do you find? And then based on that, what would you change?
And you may write a sequel to it, a part 2, so to speak?
Oh, God, I don't know. I'm not ready to think about writing again.
Yeah, might be a while.
I need a little bit of time before I can start thinking about sitting down again on that.
So when you read books now, do you like read a book with a different lens? Like, okay, this is wrong, this grammar is wrong, that I would have said this.
You know, I read it now more in the structure. I look at actually the structure, which is something I hadn't learned, and the publisher and my editors actually helped me with that as well. How are they writing the book, and in what structure are they doing? Like, the beginning of a chapter always has this sort of thing. And then it has, here's the main idea, and then here's research that actually goes through this, which leads you to this point, which then finalizes with this. Like, so as I'm reading other books now, I'm seeing the structure of how people are writing. And then I think different writers have different structures and different ideas of what they do. But the truth is, it all kind of breaks up into little Lego bits and fits together into a lovely book.
So when you wrote your book, how do you know it's finished? Like, was it like a certain number of pages you had to write, or just was a conversation? Okay, I've portrayed everything in the book I want to portray. All the ideas I want to get across, I've gotten across in this book. It's time to like lock it up and like do all the admin work on it.
Yeah, I think I got to I had sort of laid out the 4 portions like I talked about, like this is what's wrong, and this is sort of things we can do about it, and here's the exercises, and then here's the impact. And I think by the time I finished the impact, I was like, yeah, there's a ton more I could do. However, this is the way that is. Not to say book 2, but but I think at that point you just got to be done. You got to step away from it and go, that's what we're doing here. So write this part.
So any plans to turn the book to a movie?
Yeah.
A made-for-TV show?
God, a boring movie. It's a boring movie. No.
Make a book in an improv show, improv act.
But I am doing actually the audiobook for it.
Okay, I was about to say that too. Are you doing audio? Yeah,
so I'm recording the audiobook right now. Actually, publisher needs me done by the beginning of May. So then they'll do all the editing and put it together. And so, which will be fascinating. I'm doing an audiobook about how to listen.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
So, Andrew, is there anything else that I asked you that I haven't asked you, or anything else you want to talk about?
Wow, we've talked about a million different things, which I really appreciate. Yeah. I don't know if there is. Okay. I do want to say just thank you. When you had sort of said about doing this too, what I really appreciated was we're just gonna have a conversation.
Yeah.
And it's going to go as long as it's going to go.
No catchy things. No, like, yeah.
Right. And I was like, oh my God. Okay. Cause I feel like everyone else again wants to control and it wants to be this thing as opposed to.
They asked a set of 10 questions. You better answer these second 10 questions. Don't answer question 1. We can move to question 2.
Exactly. Right. It's all got to fit together and it's got to be this. So I appreciate the improvisational nature of what we've done here today.
You're very welcome. Very welcome. Can you give us your social media so people reach out to you, and also, of course, ways they can buy the book?
Yeah, LinkedIn, ImprovMindset is there. My Facebook, ImprovMindset.com, and there are links there about the book as well, so that people can check that out on those places. The book is available everywhere. I know people are having issues with Amazon as well, so if you don't want to buy it at Amazon, it's available at bookshop.org. It's available at Barnes & Noble. It's available all over. Anywhere you want to buy books.
So our subject, I don't know if you heard this, because I actually live down south by Tacoma.
Yeah.
And supposedly the Barnes & Noble in Lakewood was going out of business.
Really?
Yeah. So I don't know if that's like Barnes & Noble's closing everywhere. That's that one Barnes & Noble is.
Wow, I don't know. Because I know the one at South Center is still there and the one in Northgate is still there.
Probably just that one just closing down there.
Damn. Ouch.
Yeah.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
Big loss. Oh.
Yeah, so we got out here. You talk about a lot of stuff, a lot of great value. Could you give us any last minute advice or wisdom or anything you want to talk about?
Yeah. We talked about yes and. The challenge I give people all the time is try yes and for an entire day and see where it takes you. And then, of course, be aware of the spot that you don't accept and build on the offer, because I think that also teaches you something about what's next. So don't beat yourself up over the fact that you didn't yes and over it. Just go, oh, that's interesting. And sometimes I tell people, even if you can just take the word but and replace the word and, does the sentence still make sense? Just to see what will happen. It's that thing again of how am I hearing what people said and accepting and building on it? So yeah, my challenge is try yes and for an entire day. There we go. See what happens.
Andrew, thanks for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
And to our listeners, thank you for your time as well. Remember to be great every day.